Welcome to A Shock in the Dark, an audio journal of a haunting. This is episode 5.
Alright, like I said I would do last time I talked to you, I've made myself some little notes so there'll be less fluff in today's recording. Today, by the way, Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. It is 9:03 p.m. And this is really the recording you've been waiting for. It basically wraps up the past and tells you the weird stuff that's happening right now. And where do I stand at the moment? My honest feelings are, sure, it could be ghosts in my apartment. I won't rule that out. But at this very moment, I'm thinking that, yeah, some unusual stuff has happened, but my brain is most likely subconsciously projecting a purpose and a meaning and an importance to these completely unrelated and probably unimpressive events. And I'm just, buying into all of it because that's what I want to hear, rather than, hey bro, you're losing your mind. But I'll let you be the judge. Obviously, there's no way I can be objective, but I will tell you what has happened and the way I perceived it. So, let's get on with it. I've talked a lot about the shadow people, these featureless, darker than dark black silhouettes who, when I was a kid, would torture me on an ongoing basis just by, being around at night. And by the way, when I was a kid, I had no idea that the name shadow people was a thing. I had no idea that anyone aside from me had ever seen one of these things. And that wouldn't happen until much later on, when I was a full-grown adult. In fact, it happened a few years ago. Let's just say 10 years ago, something like that. I was driving back from somewhere late at night, some kind of job-related thing, and I had a long drive ahead of me. And I remember I was just flipping through the radio, trying to find anything interesting to listen to, and I ran across a talk show, and I just left it on for a bit, and the host of the show was talking to a man on the phone, and they were talking about something called shadow people. And that is the very first time I heard that term. But when they started talking about what a shadow person is, I was stunned. For years, I thought this was some crazy thing that only I saw as a child. And, and I'll tell you about this, but later on, other people in my family saw it. But as soon as I could get to a computer, I did. In fact, I went to my office because it was closer than my house, went in there, got on the computer, Googled shadow people, and hit the image button. And what I saw was, I was shaking from looking at it. I couldn't believe my eyes that the very first photo that popped up was a silhouette, darker than dark, no features man walking out of a wall. I could not believe that other people had seen these things too. It vindicated me, but at the same time, it scared me. Shadow people were a thing. I'd mentioned before that I was going to prove that shadow people are real. Well, this is what proves it for me. Keep in mind, I had personally seen these things when I was a kid, like every night. Then later on in life, I found out that, hundreds of thousands of people had seen the exact same thing as me. That's not proof enough. Add this into the mix. My mom and dad, about the last time I ever saw shadow people, maybe a few weeks, maybe a couple of months after that, my mom and dad were in bed. It was the middle of the night, and my mom woke up because, this is her words, she felt like somebody was watching her. So she woke up, and then she opened her eyes, and when she opened them, she saw a man and a woman silhouette standing right beside the bed, right on her side of the bed. And naturally she screamed and she dove under the covers, and that woke up my dad. My dad jumped up and turned on the lights, and my mom was like, "Did you see him? Did you see him?" Well, after they had calmed down, they talked about what they had seen, and they realized something disturbing. When my mom screamed after seeing those two people standing next to her bed, my dad woke up and he looked over on his side of the bed towards the door and the hallway, and he had seen a silhouette of a small child holding something. He said maybe like a teddy bear or something. So they had both, independently of each other, seen shadow people in the room at the exact same time. That's some creepy stuff. And to me, adds on to the proof. But that's not all. Years later, after my sister was born, and I'm going to guess sometime around her 7th or 8th birthday, something else happened that kind of sealed the deal on the proof of shadow people for me. We were all in the kitchen and we were playing that game Uno. And it was night. I think it was me, my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, maybe a family friend was over or something. And we were just laughing and having a great time when all of a sudden my sister screamed and she dropped her cards and she almost fell backwards in her chair. And she covered her mouth. She looked like she was in shock. And that the weird thing is that she was in the middle of laughing, and then just a fraction of a second later she was screaming in terror. In fact, she couldn't catch her breath. And I don't know how my parents were feeling, but I was like worried that she was not going to breathe. She was just had this open mouth, like she was screaming, but she couldn't breathe in and nothing was coming out. And I just imagined that we were going to have to give her CPR or something. But she finally gulped a first gasp of air and just started bawling. I mean, just crying. And we finally got her to settle down after a while, and she told us that she had seen her words, flat person who didn't have a face and was all black looking in the window. Here's the important part. After all this, after my sister had seen that stuff, I saw all that stuff when I was a kid, my mom and dad, their experience. After all that stuff, I still didn't believe in paranormal stuff. I mean, as an adult, I just thought that maybe I saw crazy stuff when I was a kid. People have imaginations. I don't know. I figured the shadow people were a product of matrixing, which is, the human's natural tendency to see faces where there aren't faces. And now I'm thinking a little deeper about it. And I can kind of shoot holes in some of that stuff. I mean, how did mom and dad see shadow people, different shadow people, independently of each other at the same time? How can my brain be making faces out of chaos when shadow people don't have faces? The bottom line is this. At the time my friend came over to my apartment and saw the girl watching TV in my bedroom, I had absolutely no interest or belief in anything paranormal. Well, actually, I would watch a ghost show on TV every once in a while, like people running around in the dark, or interviews with people who were haunted, because I was interested in how these normal people could actually believe they had a ghost infestation, you know? And the ghost patrol people, do they know that they're scamming people, or do they believe that, you know, they're getting contacts from the other side? I'm a see it to believe it kind of guy. But when I combine my childhood, where I did see it, I combine that with the hooves and the odd stuff from the last month, it really does start resembling something from one of those ghost shows. Well, all of that is to ensure you I understand my place in this and my beliefs in this. I'm trying to be as objective as possible about myself. And I want you to have all the information so you can form your own opinions. You know, and I do expect that this will play itself out in such a way that it will be obvious what the deal is. But I'm not going to ever embellish anything or change any fact or hide anything from you. I'm not going to hide any information. I'm trying to give you the most accurate picture I can and give you all the pieces of the puzzle, whether they're part of the puzzle or not, you know. One more note on this. You know, I have a good job that requires a lot of effort and concentration and, you know, some would say intelligence and organization, and I work very hard and I work very long hours, and I've accomplished many things in my career that I'm proud of. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not I'm not a nut job sitting around on the couch all day trying to think of like weird stuff, you know. This is not what I want to do with my time. I'm way too busy for that. I don't need to add anything else into my life. Well, as you hear about this next part, please remember, I let each one of these things pass without giving it a second thought. I mean, they certainly seemed unusual at the time. These are weird things. But, you know, I didn't think of it as anything spiritual or paranormal or anything like that. Just some weird thing that happened. All I ask is that you keep an open mind and don't just automatically think I'm crazy. I may very well be, but maybe I'm not. But I'm definitely not a liar. I definitely don't need attention. So, just for this small amount of time, please accept that this stuff just happened. And I didn't imagine it or make it up. Because this stuff happened. And I was there and I saw it. So, and it's going to sound really weird. So here we go. It's the odd stuff list. And I'm trying to list these in chronological order, and some are just simple things, and others will require more explanation. And I'm sure I'll think of other things as I'm talking to you about this, but again, just keep an open mind. So, a couple of weeks ago, the landlord of the apartment building I live in approached me, and he said he wanted to ask me a favor. He said, there are two apartments that are below me. One is a girl who's lived here for, since before I lived here, so at least a decade or something. I think her name is Delilia Carelia. It's something odd, something I'm not used to anyway. The other apartment is a guy who's lived here for a few years. Anyway, the landlord said the guy downstairs had made a complaint about loud noises in my apartment. He said this guy had been hearing something that sounded like a large animal walking around in my apartment, and he said it was keeping him up at night. He said it was definitely not a person, and that it, quote, shook his entire apartment. I'm sure it didn't shake his entire apartment. He's, just trying to get his complaint across. But, I assured the landlord that I go to bed early, first of all. I don't have any pets, and I invited him in to check out the apartment, but, he trusts me. He declined. Then, last week, in fact, I think it was the day before I recorded the last part of the story. Anyway, I was having trouble sleeping because it sounded like the people upstairs from me were dragging around heavy furniture. Just dragging furniture across the floor all night. It started just after dark. In fact, about this time. And it just went on all night until the sun came up. Now, people upstairs rearranging furniture at night might not be such an odd thing, but I live on the top floor. There is no apartment above me. And there's not even a real way to get on the roof. When the landlord had to fix some stuff when there's a leak in the roof or something, he had to hire a cherry picker to get on top of the building because a normal ladder's not going to do it. So people aren't just up there. Then on Sunday, this last Sunday, just a couple of days ago, a really, really weird thing happened. The Crow showed up. If that doesn't sound like something out of a Edgar Allan Poe thing. So, the door to my apartment is not inside the building. The door leads to the outside. When you walk out the front door of my apartment, you're outside on a balcony, like one of those motels from the 50s. So, as soon as I walk out of my apartment, there I am, outside, a few stories up. And a couple of days ago, it was around 7 o'clock in the evening, something like that, this giant crow showed up right outside my door. And he had to be sitting there for at least, 5 or 10 minutes, cawing his head off. Just this loud caw, caw outside the door. And he started pecking on my door. And it was making this really loud, I know it was amplified, I guess, just because of the way the door shaped or the material or something, but he was just pecking on his door. Just making this loud noise, and that and the cawing. There was no way I was going to open that door. I mean, it kind of felt like he was knocking on the door because of the way it sounded. It felt like he was trying to get at me. I know, this is probably imagination, but I'm just telling you. But this is even more unusual when I thought about the fact that I've never, ever seen any kind of bird on this balcony walkway. And what's he doing pecking at my door? I wasn't about to open it. I could just imagine him, going for the eyes or whatever. But eventually the crow left. But when I left the apartment a little later that night, I noticed there was a dead cricket on the walkway, centered right in the middle of my doorway. Like, you know how cats will bring its owner a dead mouse? That's what it felt like. It felt like the crow had brought me a gift. The gift of the dead insect. I don't know what it means. And yes, I am using my imagination on this, but that's what it felt like to me. And if that's not odd enough for you, the next night, which was Monday night, when I got home from work, the cricket was gone from the balcony, but when I opened my apartment door, it was inside my apartment on the floor, just inside the door, again, centered with the doorway. Now, it could have been accidentally kicked under there, or it could be the wind or something, because I do definitely have a pretty large gap under my front door, which unfortunately is large enough for stuff to fit under it. In fact, you could probably, you could definitely shove a small book under there or something. But that's not the weird part. The weird part is I got a paper towel and I was going to scoop up the bug and put it in the garbage. And when I came back from getting the paper towel, I noticed that it seemed like they had suddenly appeared there. Maybe they were there before, I don't know. But there were all these ants, like hundreds of ants. And they weren't eating the cricket like ants would usually do. But you know how ants will make a long line and all of them will crawl back and forth on that same path? Well, these ants were doing that kind of, except they were all walking in the same direction in a circle around the cricket. They were all walking around the cricket on an infinity ant path. Just a giant circle. Sorry, I'm recording this in a very professional way. What am I going to do? I'll just let this pass. Maybe I should wait for all the sirens to stop. I'm going to pause my recording. I'll come back to you in a minute. So all these ants walking around the cricket on their infinity ant path. Just a giant circle. And again, just for the record, almost every single ant was going in the same direction. There may have been one or two that were going back the other direction, but it looked crazy. It was like something out of an old black and white movie, Abbott and Costello Meet the Cannibals or something, like a scene where all the warrior cannibals danced around a giant pot on fire with Abbott and Costello in it. It just looked like these ants were doing some kind of crazy cricket ritual. And yes, I know I'm projecting here, but that is what was going on in my mind. It looked like they were performing some sort of ceremony. So I couldn't wipe that up with a paper towel. I just left the cricket there. I wasn't 100% freaked out about this, but it was very unusual. And I've watched plenty of David Attenborough and other nature specials to know that animals do all kinds of amazing things, Ants will all hold on to each other and make rafts to float on water during floods. A mother antelope will pretend like she's lame in order to distract a predator from her children. This may just be a normal thing that this type of ant does. I don't know. I'm not an ant expert. How am I supposed to know what ants do? But it seemed unusual to me. So I looked at the ant ritual for a little while, and then I got an important text. I got distracted, and before you know it, I had forgotten about the crazy ant party, ant funeral going on. So it was about an hour or an hour and a half later, when I was working on the computer, my attention again returned to my doorway. And I couldn't tell exactly what was happening from that distance, but I could tell there was something going on, some kind of movement. So I walked over to the doorway, and I squatted down and looked, and I had to have my reading glasses on to make sure that what I thought was happening was actually happening. And it was. The ants were no longer in a circle. They were no longer walking around the cricket. But they still hadn't eaten the cricket. Instead, the ants had all picked up this cricket and, hoisted it above them. And they were carrying it slowly out towards the crack underneath my door. And I know that sounds crazy. And I'm sure what do you call it when you give animals human traits? Anthropomorphization? I don't know, but look, maybe I'm completely insane, but I swear to you that it looked like a funeral or some kind of, it looked like a funeral. It did look like a funeral. It looked like these ants had given a cricket wake and then carried the cricket off to be buried wherever crickets find their final resting place. Again, I got the paper towel and I was ready to scoop all this up and throw in the garbage, but I felt like I was interrupting something important. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Even if it's just like, this is some kind of weird thing that these animals do, I just didn't want to interrupt that. And soon enough, the crickets and the whole processional was gone. They were outside the door. They took the cricket away and didn't leave a single trace of any of that happening. And I know that sounds crazy. And look, but I was not hallucinating that, okay? Maybe I projected human, tendencies or whatever onto these bugs, but that's all what this thing felt like. And then last night, and again, this is around 3 o'clock in the morning, for what it's worth, I was in bed, but I heard that sound again. I heard the hooves. And I had a lump in my throat and I couldn't swallow it. And it was like a flashback to being 6 or 7 years old again. And in this severe state of fear. The sound of those hooves. The walking around on 2 legs. And all I could do is lay there in bed with my eyes wide open and my fists clenched and ready to duck under the covers and hide if anything should appear at my doorway. And look, this is embarrassing to say. All of this is. But I'll tell you, if I had the money, I would have gotten a hotel room last night. There's no doubt. But I don't, so I can't, and I didn't. So I'm just going to have to man up and face the fact I might hear a noise again tonight. And just being honest again, I'm nervous. And I know it's embarrassing to say I'm nervous over a sound. Intellectually, I know that it's just a sound and could very well be an illusion. It could be something my brain is making up. And in any case, even if you believe in ghosts and stuff, it's not gonna hurt me. Have you ever heard of a ghost punching somebody in the face? So what am I so scared of? Just from a sound? But that 6-year-old boy in me, if that noise happens again, it's going to be terrified. You know, the topic of ghosts came up at work today, totally unrelated, because, look, I'm not talking about this stuff at work, right? But the topic of ghosts came up at work, and a couple of people that I work with, let's just call them Jimmy and Clark, they were completely whipping into anybody who claims to have seen a ghost. But their logic is so flawed. They say, how come there's no pictures of ghosts? And I say, have you ever been on the internet and looked for pictures of ghosts because they're there? And they replied, yeah, but those are fake though. Which is a crazy logic. Think about that. They would believe in ghosts if there was a photo. But if there was a photo of a ghost, it would be fake. I thought I may really believe in ghosts after what happened with the hooves. I just don't know. The thing I'm sure of is if it comes back, you're the only person I can talk to about this. Who else am I going to tell? It's embarrassing. I feel stupid. But that's why you're here. And hopefully all this is over and we're good next week. With any luck. Fingers crossed. That'll be the end of the story. Right now I'm going to get some sleep. I hope. Next time we talk, it will be all hell breaking loose, and that wraps up the story. Next time there'll be a light at the end of the tunnel, or it'll just be a tunnel. Wish me luck. Good night, whoever you are.
You've been listening to A Shock in the Dark, an audio journal of a haunting. For a free subscription to this series, push the subscribe button. To get an alert when the next episode posts, push the bell notification symbol. Post your questions or comments to the narrator in the comments section below. To contribute your recorded or personal story for this series, send it in an email to aSHOCKintheDARK@gmail.com. Until next time, as our narrator says, good night, whoever you are.